Please welcome Fareed Zakaria, who's joining us live.
Thank you so much. Gosh, this is a huge honor. I can't tell you how honored I am. It's been amazing to just watch this cavalcade of fascinating people, the photographs, the photojournalists, the incredibly brave people. I've been a fan of ICFJs forever. Joyce Barnathan is a friend. I knew her when she was a great journalist before she took over ICFJ. She's married to one of my former colleagues from Newsweek. To have Wolf here emceeing the whole thing, I'm stunned and in awe. I have to confess, I'm mostly silenced almost by the other two nominees, and it raises a larger point. I've often thought that people like me, American, particularly television journalists, but established journalists, we have it easy. We get to take awards like these and bask in this kind of glory, but we don't really risk our lives the way that Roman and Alina, and so many others. There were the people all over the world, and I grew up in India seeing some of that, the risks people were taking. And I've often felt almost embarrassed to be a journalist in the United States and watch these people risk their lives for the same values we hold. W.H. Auden once said that when he would talk to scientists, he would feel like a shabby English cleric who had just entered a room full of earls and dukes. And that's a little bit the way I feel when I listen to the stories of these extraordinary investigative journalists who are risking their lives every day. I really do feel like I have it easy. But now, all of a sudden, I feel as though we are all in it together in a way that has been sad, dangerous, but incredibly important. In 1997, I wrote an essay in Foreign Affairs. It's called The Rise of Illiberal Democracy. And what I noticed was it seemed like democracy was winning everywhere. The Cold War was over. America was bestride the world like a colossus. And yet when I go to countries, when I was reporting on this extraordinary democratic wave, what I noticed was in a lot of these places, the people who were getting elected were fairly freely elected. They were popular, but then they would systematically undermine democracy. And one of the key tools they used was to undermine the freedom of press. They would muzzle it, they would intimidate it, they would jail journalists, they would defund them. And that process was at the heart, the kernel of why I wrote that essay, The Rise of Illiberal Democracy. The strange combination of democratically elected, often popular with some large segment of the population, authoritarians who then throttle democracy using the guise, using the rules, using the mechanisms of democracy itself. And I thought I was describing the Balkans, and I was describing Turkey, and I was describing India at times, and I was describing Pakistan. And what I have been stunned to watch over the last 20 years is the way in which that phenomenon has not only grown and settled down into a kind of comfortable mixture of populism and illiberalism and authoritarianism in many of those parts of the world, but it has also come back to the West. If you look at the rise of populism in the West, the most troubling feature of it has been the way in which often popular leaders then turn on the very liberal democracy that has nurtured them and nurtured these societies. Obviously, it is happening in the United States, where we have a president who routinely calls the free press the enemy of the people. But it is happening in country after country. And all of a sudden, I feel as though we have something to contribute. We have something to contribute to this struggle to make sure that we keep democracy alive, we keep the values that we all believe in alive. And all of a sudden, they seem imperiled everywhere. as I say, it's a dangerous time. It's not a cause for celebration of any kind, but it is incredibly urgent that we recognize that these values are under siege, that they are being threatened everywhere. And if they collapse, if we collapse in our efforts to defend them in the United States, in a country where journalism, journalists, and the press are constitutionally protected, it's the only industry that is protected in the American Constitution itself. If it starts to flail here, what will it look like everywhere else in the world? And what we have to ask ourselves is, how do we combat this new form of authoritarianism, which wraps itself in the guise of popularity and populism, wraps itself as the tribune of the people, and tries to set people against people by playing a kind of class warfare or a political warfare, all of which, however, has one effect, which is to diminish the quality of democracy, to diminish the role of the free press, and to strike at the heart of truth itself. So I feel as though we are now joined in this struggle. Again, it is the foreign journalists, the people who are out there in the Arab world and in Russia and in parts of South Asia who are struggling, who are risking their lives. We still have it easier, but we are at least joined in a common struggle. It is so important that you help with your donations, with whatever you can. It is so important that all of us keep the faith and keep talking about these issues and writing about them and voting about them, because ultimately that is the only defense we have. My greatest sadness in writing that essay 25 years ago was to realize that, I had imagined that liberal democracy was all about institutions. If you have good courts and a good constitution and a separation of powers, all that was going to protect the great liberal democracies of the world. All those things would build the new liberal democracies of the world. Well, it turns out at the end of the day, institutions are only as strong as the people in them. And more than anything else, you need people who are committed to democratic values like the freedom of the press. And if you don't have those people being eternally vigilant, you can have the fanciest buildings in the world and the nicest constitution on paper, and it doesn't seem to matter, because those institutions get eroded, those constitutions get corrupted, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a very scary and different world than you had imagined. So thank you to the ICFJ for giving me this award. But I hope that in giving me this award and giving the award to other people, the most important thing we are doing is highlighting the incredibly important work that it is doing, that journalists around the world are doing, and how important that struggle has become. It truly is a life and death struggle, and what is at stake is liberal democracy itself. Thank you so much.